So tonight's session, as I said, is engaging and retaining young people and will be led by Fran Lutz. Fran is the Regional Development Officer for Scottish Orienteering, and she supports clubs across the west of Scotland. She's been specifically involved in junior development at club level since 2019. So welcome, Fran. We're delighted to have you presenting. And I think I will, with that, hand over to you. Matt, I'll jump to you, hopefully.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, right. Thanks everybody for joining in tonight. Teams is not the sort of usual system I use, so we'll see how it goes. I've had a message up saying that my internet's a bit unstable, so I might turn into a Dalek at some point. So forgive me if that's the case. So thanks very much for having me along. What we're going to do is have a quick look at the overview for tonight. I'm going to share the screen just now. And then we're going to do a little quiz, and then we'll have a little bit of a discussion, followed by sort of presentation of some ideas from different parts of the UK. So it's not entirely sitting and listening to me. We hope the technology will bear with us, but I'm going to share my screen just now. That's the first technological challenge, and see if that works. And then at various points, various people may jump into the conversation with me. I'll just briefly introduce, we've got Neil Rankin, Chloe Haynes, Roger Scrutton, Anne Hickling and Lynn Walker, all from Scottish Orienteering, who will be part of things at different points. And then Kay Hawke from Pendle Forest Orienteers will also make an input. So they may take over at some point if I lose the plot. Okay, let's go. Let's see how the first challenge goes. Now, can I bring up the right thing here? Right, can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I will go to play. Okay, so we've had the title, we can skip that bit. Apart from this is a picture of a youngster on Arran who Offer and Bat set up some orienteering courses and classes for people on the island of Arran. So yeah, she's one of our young volunteers. So we're going to have a look at that big picture, have a look at some of the issues from that big picture, and then have a look at what I'm calling the missing links, and have a look at an example of some ways we may be able to address those missing links. Then have a look at some of the pathways predominantly that we've been looking at in Scotland, and then some of the ways forward. And just recognising that none of this is easy, none of it's straightforward, and we definitely don't have all the answers, but hopefully this will spark some thoughts off for everybody about what some of the options might be. So first of all, I want you to get your fingers on the chat button so that you can type either A, B, C or D, and we're going to go through a very short quiz and see what answers you come up with. So the very first question, fingers on the ready, are they? I can't do that kind of music that you need from Mastermind or anything, but imagine it's happening, and here we go. So the first question, how many British teams undertake no regular exercise? Is it A, B, C or D?
Oh, how do we vote?
Well, if you can't do that, just put in, if you put in the chat which letter you think it is, and if you can't do that, just mental note, we're not marking this, we're not giving you scores out of 10, there are no prizes for this, so just take note of it. Rianne, are you getting answers coming in through the chat? I can't see that just now.
Yes, we are. So we've got loads of them. Quite a few C's, a few D's coming in too. Those are the majority. We've got Angela who said B. So the majority, the rest. Oh, and Carol's just put in a B as well. So there are a few different answers in there.
Okay, so here we have the answer. 75%. So quite a shocking figure, and I think it's because it's no regular exercise. So there are definitions around that. So that's the first question. Next one, what percentage of participants at national and regional orienteering events are juniors? A, B, C, or D?
Got a few A's coming in and a couple of B's suggestions.
Okay.
More B's.
And the answer is 18%. So it's not dreadful, but it's not great. So that's where we are. And this is across the whole of the UK. Next question, what percentage of British orienteering juniors drop out of orienteering by the age of 21? A, B, C, or D? So 22%, 35%, 58%, or 70%?
Some quite varied on this one.
Okay.
To lean towards the C's and D's.
Okay, well, we'll just reveal the answer. It's 70%, so that's a massive dropout. And I guess that's one of the things that we're kind of looking at in all of this. Don't know if any of you've seen the top graph before. It's I don't know if Roger, who's on the call, if he's just put that together and it hasn't been shared, or if it's been around in other sort of circles. But it basically shows that if you look at the I'll just take this pen and show you pen here. So up at the top part here, you're looking at youngsters probably around the age of 12 to 14. And we have a big kind of recruitment around that period of time. And then there's just almost this kind of cliff edge where our membership drops and keeps dropping into that kind of 20 age group. And that's the same curve for the blue dots are what it was like in 20,000, and the vertical up and down bars are 2018. The difference between the two charts really was that the bulk in 2000 at the same height again was in that sort of 40 heading into the 50 age group. 20 years later, surprisingly, well, not surprisingly really, that's where the next kind of bulge is, if you like. So this first lot have got older and stayed with the sport, but this lot, we're not seeing a bulge happening again to kind of counter that in any way. Below on the second chart, this is some work that Roger has just put together using spreadsheets over membership over a 6-year period. And I think I've got the colours right here. But what's interesting to know is this grey line, you see a bit of a bulge here in that kind of 14, 15, 16 age group. And then in the yellow line, which is couple of years, well, it's a year later, you're seeing a similar bulge. And then I think the green line's a bit later, and it does look as if something happened that then meant we had a bit of follow through. So there was some kind of recruitment done in that slightly older age group in some shape or form that followed through over consecutive years and meant that by the time you got to university, whereas the other years it was a much lower kind of drop off, there'd been potentially some retention. Don't know if that's accurate or not, but it's valuable to have a look at data over a long period of time, and I'm not sure how much data is gathered in the background. I was trying to get some figures for Scottish orienteering, and that wasn't completely easy and clear to do, but just worth thinking about. So the next slide, I think that's the membership for last year. So you're seeing the same thing. You're seeing this kind of bulge in those early teen years, and then this bulge in the kind of 50s and 60s, but this big drop off in between times. So that's just to give a sense of the kind of longitudinal picture. What I thought is also useful to look at is the picture in Scotland, and I know a lot of folk have said, you know, we do better with juniors, and I think this chart to some extent shows that. We've got a variety of clubs that have a stronger junior membership. So that lighter green, you have a look at the clubs up here. So we've got 3 clubs that have got a really good membership in terms of juniors, and we see that in terms of what those clubs are doing and the activity that follows through. In the West area, which I cover, Echo is a smaller club, but they've done a lot of work, and that figure is actually higher now in terms of recruiting juniors. And Forth Valley Orienteers similarly have put quite a lot of time into juniors. And in Dumfries and Galloway area, Solway is another club that have invested time in juniors. In the east side, which I'm less familiar with, you can see probably ELO is the club that has the largest number of juniors, and then the kind of two Edinburgh-based clubs here have got, it's certainly a bigger proportion than we're seeing for the British Orienteering statistics overall. Edinburgh University here, well, you'd expect there to be, because the age for going to university is a bit younger here. They've got a good, healthy number of what would be termed juniors. But I thought it's just useful to look at that picture of Scotland as a whole, compared with the graph we're seeing for BOF overall. Okay, so we're going to move on to another question. So fingers on the buzzers. How many universities and further education establishments are there across the UK and Ireland? A, B, C, or D?
Oh, shit.
Lots of C's and D's, a couple of B's.
Okay, so we've got that's your figure for.
Oh, well done, Lynn.
B. And the next question is, how many have orienteering clubs that are registered with British Orienteering? Is it A, B, C, or D? How are we getting on with those answers? Oh, you've gone on mute.
Quite the mix. Mostly C's and B's, a couple of D's. There we go.
There we go. So there's the answer. So I think that figure's probably, I had a quick look, and certainly at least 2 of the ones who are down in Scotland aren't really in existence at all. Probably about a decade or so ago, we had at least 7 universities active, and I would say we've got one very healthy one, which is Edinburgh University, that everybody knows about, and we have one other university that's got some activity. The rest, no. We have been looking at it, we have been trying to work out what to do, but it's really quiet. So yeah, that's where we are. So I'm going to stop sharing just now. We're going to put you into 3 groups. Brianne's going to assign you to a group, and you'll have a question, hopefully, to answer. Okay, I wonder if we just have a quick run through key points. So, Lynn, do you want to feed back maybe key points from your group?
Just coming off mute there. Okay, there was quite a variety of ideas coming through from there, from making sure that the squads are inclusive rather than exclusive. So because people have got various reasons for wanting to orienteer, And if you can have a kind of neighbouring clubs squad, then there's not too much travel involved. And it means that one club isn't having to suffer, you know, just training for all of it. Something else was dates which fit in with school holiday times for major events if long travel distances are involved, because you want to engage the families because it's the car of mum and dad, and, you know, engage the family, then the people will stay in orienteering for longer because the family is a family activity. Making friends, really important that they have the social opportunity, and a few other ones as well coming in there, Fran, but I'll leave the Jamboard and you can copy it and post it up later. Is that okay?
Okay, yeah, that's a quick post of Lynn's one. So what we'll do is all of this will be available later as well. I'll just switch on to what was covered in my session, and we can hopefully get on to what Neil was saying as well. So our question was what engages young people in orienteering. So some similar themes, that stuff around friends, a sense of belonging and things. This whole idea of things not being too competitive, but also having a challenge, and then just things that were fun, and things that provided some kind of incentive as well. So that's a quick whistle-stop tour of what our group was saying. Neil, did you manage to get things up on your board? You did, yeah.
Yeah, we were able to get that up. So some similar themes coming through. There's definitely the social aspect and lack of other juniors to socialise with, and I think that tied into the point there about emphasis on competition and what happens to juniors if they're not selected for squads. So the competition element. There are similar questions raised around transport and lack of transport provision from schools, which maybe used to be the case, and a few other there about time commitments. Interesting conversation about not being seen as a cool sport. And there was a particular discussion around how young women interact with the sport and similar sports, for example, cross country and park runs. So, yeah, a few similar comments there that we were able to get down.
Okay, excellent. Thanks very much for that. What we're going to go and do just now is have a look at, I suppose, work that's happened in the background. I think it's quite important to realise we have done various bits of work, both British Orienteering and then more recently Scottish Orienteering. We started to look at that. And just get a feel for what the different issues are. So I'm going to share the screen again and we'll run through some of those bits. Folk can jump in with comments during that as well if they want. So Roger, you had a question there. I find the screen awful to find something about juniors. What was your question there, Roger? Do you just want to
Roger asked a question in the chat, and it's a really good one. Do we have any juniors with us, and would they like to give a view? So I'll give it a moment to see if anybody's put their hand up. Doesn't look like it.
Okay, so we'll come on to some stuff we've done recently, and we can give some quotes from juniors, which may sort of, yeah, give a bit more flesh to some of this. So in the meantime, if we go back to which screen am I on? Here we go. And I shall play from current slide. Here we go. Everybody see this? So the British Orienteering Every Junior Matters was produced, I think, in 2018. And the key reasons are the reasons in green that they found for people leaving the sport. That was around academic pressures, social reasons, hobby prioritisation, and a proliferation of choices and busy lives. I think that's probably quite familiar in some ways to many people. I have to confess that I hadn't been aware of that research until quite recently. I've had my fingers wrapped and I have now at least looked at some of it. But in the meantime, we were asking similar questions about, you know, how do we keep juniors, etc. And we've had a conversation, what we called a community conversation, led by the equality group that is a kind of subgroup of the board. And we had young people sort of helping facilitate that. So basically the kind of themes that came out of that, both in the community conversation and the follow-up survey, about half of the participants were young people, and the themes were very much, we need additions to the elite performance pathway. That's a well-oiled system. In Scotland we have what we call ScotJOS, Scottish Junior Orienteering Squad, and for those who get into that, it's a really positive and great experience. Sometimes there are some issues further up that was becoming clear, but that elite performance pathway is well oiled. But there are a lack of, as you're pointing out in the comments you've made so far, just a lack of, I suppose, social opportunities, that need for fun, need for that kind of recreational side of things. Cost and transport came through, particularly for university-aged young people, and as Neil said, the image of the sport. So Neil, I don't know if you want to add anything to that at all, or?
No, I think it covers it really well, and yeah, the points around a competition was a big one that came out in our community conversation, and just what are those opportunities to keep people involved that don't necessarily make those competitive squads, because it is that age, as you showed on your graph, that the kind of 13, 14 where people start to drop off, and I guess the risk is that they don't come back. And we know that there are a lot of people that come back to the sport, and that's great. It shows that they do have really good experiences when they are younger. But the big risk is that people don't return to the sport, and they go into their adult life, and there's a lot more different sports that are on offer. But if we're able to keep people involved for longer from a younger age, then that certainly is more likely to keep them involved lifelong.
Yeah, and I think these are some direct quotes from young people, just saying, you know, if you feel like you don't have a chance, you're less likely to do it. So if there aren't those recreational opportunities beyond the performance squads, that's an issue. So there are no non-elite pathway or fun pathways. That's not quite the case. We do have that, but we need to work on that more. There doesn't seem to be support for orienteers who are not as fast. It's being sold as too competitive. So those are definite themes coming through from young people. In terms of what does work, this is the Scottish context, but it was that fun and youth focused event. So a plea to keep the Jamie Stevenson, so that's an annual event where the focus is on young people. It's much more about teams than the individual, and also to keep the Junior Cup. So this is something we started last year as part of lockdown. It's a series of 3 events that are focused on juniors. So we do allow adults to come along, but the focus is on juniors, and having kind of flags up and just trying to get them a sense of that's a good place to meet youngsters. So again, that more youth orientated events, less emphasis on winning. Youngsters talking about local leagues, a number of them like the idea of kind of school leagues, anything that made them feel they were contributing in some way. It was more than just their individual performance. Having good experiences for all juniors, not just ScotJOS, so not just that performance squad. Club weekends can be really good for this, and then definitely organising more socials as a club, as well as organising minibuses to events so parents don't have to travel so far. And I thought that was really an interesting comment. Just a slight aside, but that's one of the things that really got me engaged in sport as a youngster, was travelling with other people. As an adult now, I think, oh God, that was purgatory, some of those journeys. But actually, we had so much fun on minibuses and coaches, and included all the breaking down and everything else. But it's that sense that you're part of something bigger. So, you know, a lot of youngsters don't want to be in a team sport in the way that football or netball is, but they want to have that sense of belonging. So I thought that was all very interesting. Neil mentioned
a couple of questions, Fran. I wonder, before we get any further on, if I could just a couple in the chat. One, Hilary asks, by image of the sport, is it to do with that so many people are elderly? Is that what was coming through?
It's a mixture. There's definitely that perception. We'll hear from a youngster a bit later on about that. I think it's not seen as particularly trendy or cool. I think we've moved beyond the stage of looking as if we're all wearing pajamas, but we're probably not much further on. I mean, lycra clad has in some circles quite negative associations. Some of the cycling fraternity have comments about lycra and stuff like that. So yeah, we're definitely not cool and trendy, but some of our youngsters are saying we could be really cool and trendy if we sold it well. And I think that's why I'm quite keen to look at this next example, which is from Northern Ireland. And somebody in our group mentioned mud. And if I get back to sharing screen.
We've got another couple, if that's okay, Fran.
Oh, have you? Okay.
Yeah, we've got so the question about the social demographics of, I imagine it's Richard Johnson, if you want to come in with to elaborate on that. Do we have a view of the social demographics? I expect that's to do with comparatively.
My son's a business manager at one of the local schools. Let's just say one of the local schools. It's not a very well-off area. I can't think of I'm trying to think of the politically correct words to be using here. That they would see this running around and doing all this sort of stuff as quite a posh, well-to-do sort of thing, and not something that's available to all demographics. And how much targeting is done at the schools to sort of like the schools that probably haven't got the incomes, the monies, the jobs, and all of those other social sorts of problems. Is this potentially sometimes seen as being a bit targeted, a bit elitist? That it's that again, we're all talking about all these events, we're talking about all these cups, we're talking about all these leagues, we're talking about all this travel. Some of those schools, mum and dad haven't got a car. Mum and dad are struggling, with the local buses or whatever. So it's the inclusion, and it's for all, if that's where I'm going to.
Yeah, and that is something we are starting to look at, because you're absolutely right. The image is very much a perception of a middle class, more elite sport, and yet we know, anybody who's involved, that it's got a huge amount to offer, but there are definitely barriers in the way. We'll come back to that if we can just move on just now. I know I can see there are other kind of questions going, but I wonder if we can kind of have a look at the kind of cool and trendy stuff. We're going to come back to have a look at what is it we can do, and what can we start to take on board in our own areas. Is that okay if we just...
Yes, Jackie, is that okay if we come back to you?
Yeah, I'm just conscious kind of time-wise,
yeah,
we are going to be up against it. So if we go back to playing, and so we were talking about cool and trendy, and one of the initiatives in Northern Ireland has been targeting kids who in some way are already a little bit getting into the outdoors. And what I quite liked about this idea was it was a 4-week program, once a week, and it was really focused on, it's about having fun, it's about getting muddy and running wild. And if I was a youngster, that kind of idea of running wild would just have really appealed to me. And I think there's something in that way of selling things. I mean, there's a lot of this that's probably not going to immediately appeal to youngsters, but if you've got an adult selling that whole idea of adventure and fun and mud, I think you're onto a winner. So this seems to have been a really successful initiative in Northern Ireland that I think starts to move along the way to dealing with that whole issue around cool and trendy. And there are some videos out there that youngsters have done that I think really portray orienteering in a kind of more trendy way. But yeah, I think in many ways we've got quite a long way to go to address the image of the sport, and we still get people that think it's, you know, you're out doing a kind of Duke of Edinburgh expedition for days on end, and that's what orienteering's about. I think the other bit of the Northern Ireland initiative that's interesting was the importance of having the caregivers and parents involved in a WhatsApp group, so that there was that kind of connection. And yeah, definitely, if you're involving youngsters, you have to involve the adults that are around them in some way, because without that connection, they're unlikely to get support to go further. Okay. So I wonder if we can go on to the missing links bit just now and then come back to questions, because there's a really useful example of something that Pendle Forest Orienteers have done, and I think maybe if we look at what that's been about, it might address some of the questions. So if I can just bash on at the moment and show you where we are. So what I'm saying, I've talked about the missing links, and what I see as one of the big missing links, or important links. It's not missing in all cases, but it definitely is. That's my experience as a development officer. It's missing in some cases, and that's clubs. That there's no connection to schools or uniformed organisations or youth groups and universities, etc. There's not a kind of regular programme of fun activities that was mentioned in previous stuff, needing regular things. The kind of social media image is not particularly there or cool. That don't seem to be kind of incentives around, and there's not an elite performance pathway. So to me, if these elements aren't around in what we're trying to do in terms of engaging young people, we're kind of missing a trick. And where things go well and clubs are engaged in that, I think it can make a huge difference. So I was going to hand over now to Kay Hawke from Pendle Forest to give an example of what they have done through lockdown, really, around virtual orienteering and linking up and making partnerships. So Kay, are you happy to jump in now? It's all gone quiet. Kay, are you there still? I'll get on to the first slide.
Frozen.
Who's frozen? Kay?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, she's on mute, Fran.
Oh, is she? Okay, I can't see because I've got the big screen in front of me. Let me see if I can. If I stop sharing, I won't be able to.
No, that's fine. I can. It just looks like she's lost connection for a minute. She'll be back soon.
Okay. I wonder if we. It was just a lovely example of work that has happened
She's
in Pendle.
back.
Is she? Okay.
It looks like it.
Give her a couple of seconds to regain her composure. Kay, are you with us?
Yep, can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay, you happy to take over and just share? That's your first slide, and just tell me when you want me to move on.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Sod's law that it was going off as soon as I got called up. Yeah, so basically Pendle Forest really started networking with local partnerships from lockdown, really. We still are quite a small club in the Rosendale and East Lancashire area, and we just had the idea upon the start of lockdown really to do something within the community. The best thing that we found really in terms of appealing to the youth and getting the message out there in terms of what we can do for you is joining with the local school sports partnership. The school sports partnership that we started with first of all was Rosendale School Sports Partnership, creating just a simple set of map run activities. We were talking before in the breakout room about what appeals to the youngsters, and you know, like somebody said, they've always got the mobile phone glued in the hand, and you know, they're always looking for an excuse to be on the phone, and this just tied in really well with what we can do to attract youngsters to a competition. And Rosendale School Sports Partnership promoted it throughout the summer of June and July 2020. So when it says at the top, get networking, it really is the biggest thing that you can do for the club that we found that helps get the message across, in terms of we can reach now 12,000 pupils just with a simple email from myself or one of the club members to the contacts that we've got in Burnley School Sports Partnership, Rosendale School Sports Partnership, and so on, like you can see. And it's literally an easy job for them just to copy and paste the list of our events and of stuff that we're doing over the holidays, which gets sent to every single child within the East Lancashire region. As you can see there, Rottenstall Market, they've got new management that have come on board in the last 18 months, and they've turned themselves into like a local trendy foodie market. So they were wanting to do some more within the community. So we've just created simple school holiday activities that start and finish from the market, different trails, one going up into the woods, one that's an urban trail, one that's a map run. And they've been kind enough to just give out prizes for people, in terms of just a little Easter egg or just a bag of sweets when they come back and finish the trails. So it's like a rolling stone, really. It's a case of fear of missing out. People hear about the events each time that we do one, and then, you know, Rosendale Radio and the Free Press want to get involved and promote them. And from there, you know, as you can see on the bottom left, we've got different people that are joined with the club now, and you know, their roles vary, but the bottom two, Pendle and Burnley Junior Grand Prix and Trawden ACs, they're a local fell running group. And they've asked us from these events to just put on simple map run events that they can use as part of their winter and summer league that, you know, ties in orienteering to pretty much the fell running, the cross country running that the children are used to, in an environment that, you know, that they're already secure in. If you skip to the next slide, please. So as you can see there, on our webpage, we always have each time that we do a trail, we'll always have a dedicated webpage for the activities, which we put on the QR code on the posters. So if anyone's just passing, they can scan into it. From that webpage, they can always download the maps or find further info. As you can see, it says different types of activities to keep the interest. So on the left hand side, you can see one of the come and try it events with real life timing controls. We've got Easter egg trails, Christmas trails that are just attached to the lamppost, a series of posters where they have to just find the different Christmas code words on there. Or on the far side is just a set of lampposts, very similar to street orienteering, via the Google Forms. What we found really good is that this variety just stops the boredom. And also within the club, it's helped get our membership involved in some of the planning and organising. We've asked some of the club members that are, you know, they come to events, but they're not planners and they're not organisers whatsoever, but they're very happy to go around their local streets and plot a lampo, a 1K lampo, starting and finishing from the local school. And from then, we've had quite a few members that have started by planning simple town centre trails or lamppost trails that have then got into more planning of local events over the last couple of years. The bottom left is, you know, it speaks for itself, the social media promotion. I think we had 200 likes on our Facebook page at the start of 2020. We're now nearly 500. Just creating simple posters. They really are simple, even though they might look complicated to some people. You know, if you download or go on the website Canva, which we swear by, they're very simple to create, and they're really appealing over social media, and they put the message across quite easily rather than just an A4 sheet of information. You can have, you know, the come and try it event just as a poster. What we found as well with doing these trails is that even though obviously we're here tonight to retain the youth and get the youth involved, is that adults love them just as much as the youngsters. local running club members use them as their training runs, even our own orienteers use them as training runs, etc. And obviously if you bring in the children in and the adults are going round with the children on the streets, then the adults are getting involved, and we've possibly had more adults join us from the trails than we have youths. I saw a question pop up before about how many youths we've retained and etc. We're quite a small club, but from these trails alone, we've had 5 youths that have joined and stayed with us in 2 years, which I think is quite a lot really for the membership that we've got. Do you want to move on to the next slide, please, Van? So everybody loves something, even though they would like to do it for free. But we've had different ways of rewarding people. And it just tends to keep the interest. So as you can see on the top left, the Halloween sweet bags. It was a bit of a chore to do at the time, but I think all in all we had 90 people complete the Halloween trails that we did, which were lamppost trails around the streets, finding the code words, as I've said. And each family or each set of people that completed it, they filled in a Google form with their address on if they wanted to, of course, and they got sent we hand delivered a set of sweet bags which had some sweets in it. It had a flyer for the club in it with a list of our next events that were coming up, and we also had a free entry voucher for everybody that took part in it, just as a thank you, and just to kind of put the club out there. And you know, the response, even though it was time consuming and it took a few days to drive the streets, you know, an hour at a time, and when the members were free to do so, the amount of positive feedback that we have from that, people that were just thankful for just a bag of sweets. And I think the cost to the club was about £35 in terms of just buying the sweets and getting the flyers printed, etc. As you can see, Rotten Store Market were very kind in donating an Easter egg for everybody that finished. I think they regretted it at the time because they had nearly 300 people that finished it over the Easter holidays. But again, they were brilliant in supporting us, and just simple things that you can see. The press, even though it's a local paper, the parents love to see, you know, their child's picture in the press, and they're always sending pictures through on Facebook and Instagram, and they're always more than happy for us to use, you know, their pictures in local press. And obviously this all takes time, and Rotten Store Market are quite a new backing for us, as our Burnley Town Centre management. But as a club yourself, it really doesn't take a lot other than time to just do things like create sweet bags or create a free, you know, entry for their next event, really. Do you want to just move on to the last one, Fran? So I'll let you just have a read of that, and then I'll just surmise the few points that I've written there. Okay, so the top one I think is really important for what we've done in East Lancashire, that it's now become the norm that Pendle Forest are doing something in the school holidays. People are asking us on social media, school sports partnerships are asking us, active partnerships are expecting that there's something in the school holidays. And when we do something in the school holidays, we'll start it at the start of it and finish it at the end of it. So stuff's always open for a week or 6 weeks or 2 weeks. And it's become the norm that some kind of orienteering experience is taking place. But interestingly enough, we've never called it orienteering. You know, it's always shop trails, or it's a town centre trail, or it's an urban explore. So the public are doing orienteering without them realising, really. We've introduced Come and Try It, the catty events in popular parks, not long after school holiday events, or maybe on a Saturday afterwards or a couple of weeks afterwards. Wherever they've done the trails, we tend to do a real life event with, you know, for free, with timings and electronic controls in some place that's familiar to them, really, to just break down the barrier, because they've already been there over the school holidays doing various trails. We use community hubs. We print off the maps ourselves at a cost to the club. So we print off maybe 50 maps and 50 answer sheets and just drop them off at different community hubs around the area. They also promote it on social media. And yeah, so I've already spoken about the bottom on the local parks, but I think the biggest thing that I can emphasize to you is just emailing your local active partnership. They can be found on a very simple website called activepartnerships.org. And off there, you've got a sublink that's called Active Partnership, and it'll tell you which is your active partnership for your area. And they have tens and tens of community links that they can, even if it's just them forwarding your email to, that you'll find that they will open a lot of doors. And just with my British Orienteering head on here, I know there's a couple of people here tonight, Andrew and Helen, that are part of Southampton Orienteering Club and Dartford Orienteering Club, that are part of a new British Orienteering project that I'm leading on called the Find Your Way project. So when we were mentioning before about going into communities that, you know, aren't the nicest communities, should we say, in areas of high deprivation, the project that we're leading on with some of the clubs around England over the next 3 years is designed to take orienteering to these communities via virtual orienteering, using the MapRun app specifically, and funded by Sport England. So you'll be hearing a lot more of that in the next month or next 6 weeks when it starts to launch. But hopefully that will help to engage some of the youth that we haven't engaged before in the past, and retain some of the youth that have tried it and maybe are wary of carrying it on. But I think I saw something pop up in the chat just to finish off with, that it sounds like a lot of effort. It is a lot of effort, and I do take the brunt of it for my club, but as anything, it's only a lot of effort on the startup, and getting all them connections. But like I said, I can't emphasize enough, get in contact with your local school sports partnership or your active partnership, and they'll do a lot of the work for you.
Okay, thanks very much, Kay. That's a really interesting example, and I hope addresses some of the questions that people have been raising so far. So yes, it is a lot of work, but you know, there can definitely be returns on that. Notice Roger's asking about whether impact's been measured in terms of membership and possible retention. I think Kay was saying a wee bit about that, but yeah, I think it's one of the challenges for clubs is kind of tracking what works and what doesn't work. But yeah, any more questions from that before we move on? No, some good. Yeah, okay. So we'll go back to now have a look at the kind of Scottish picture in a bit more detail, and I will see if I can get to the right place on, yeah, here we go. Okay, is this going to work? Come on. Yeah, here we go. So just going to have a look at some of the different pathways we've been exploring in Scotland that will hopefully give you some additional ideas. So briefly, partnership working, something certainly that we've been working at in terms of development officer level and club development officers that we work alongside. We've also done some work around young leaders, family sessions, it's sort of looking at different incentive schemes, area squads, and also engaging juniors in that more planning and organising side. So I'm going to take you through some of what that means in practice. So in terms of partnership, our equivalent, I guess, to the sports partnerships are active schools. And we've had a lot of engagement through a lockdown with an interest in getting youngsters outside. So we've done some work in Dundee over the past year and a half with the active schools coordinators there. So we trained them up to be able to start to deliver more stuff locally. One of the weak links for us was no strong club in the area, so we had to work out what support to give when there was interest. Dundee's got fairly high levels of deprivation, but they had a very active group of active schools coordinators who were keen to see something happen. So we linked with them and then took one of our young leaders and engaged her and paid her to work alongside them to deliver 3 sessions over 3 different weeks in the summer period. So these pictures, let me get my little pen up. These pictures here are in the different local parks. So people were talking about sort of street orienteering and things. Well, most places have got parks somewhere, and they're a good starting point. We are beginning to work on people doing street events to see if we can get some that are kind of a bit more targeted at youngsters and can have safe spots. But what the Dundee team did was set up what we call postbox challenges using Map Run, and the deal there is parents would go out with children, so that kind of gets around some of the issues, and that maybe was similar with Kay in Pendle Forest. So that's been one set of kind of partnership working. At a very local level where I am, we've linked up with a local youth club, and the deal was we're not going to do one-off sessions, we'll do a series of sessions, and that really worked. So out of 20 youngsters that came along, we've had 8 who've continued to take part in more regular sessions. But key to that has been involving parents and keeping things regular and local. So this is a couple of the youngsters getting involved in our first junior cup, and this youngster here, he really was looking forward to the adventure. He got himself geared up. This is a wood literally in walking distance of where we live, and he'd splashed all sorts of paint over himself, so he saw this as a real challenge. And you know, he's really not that interested in winning, he's just interested in lots and lots of fun. So mud and diversions are up his street. But key to all of this is partnerships, whether it's working with young leaders, youth groups, active schools, uniformed organisations, whoever. That's a really important starting point. So the young leaders, we've had 2 routes for that. It's one has been youngsters at school doing it as part of something that might feed into Duke of Edinburgh, and the other has been taking youngsters who are already within the orienteering system. And so this group of youngsters here are young leaders, if you like, in the sense of youngsters who are already engaged as orienteers, whereas the youngster in the bottom picture here, he came in through the school route but then supported activity in after school clubs. And again, we've had a number of clubs that have done that very successfully. Marrock in Aberdeenshire, the 2 clubs on that earliest screen at the top of Scotland have both done a lot of after school activity. So it's that kind of amalgamation of working with different partners and bringing in young people. This is a bit of feedback from some of the young leaders that worked on different summer camps this year. So Emma did the Dundee side of things, and she's really got very interested in the coaching side. She's one of the youngsters who's a little bit on the edge. She comes and goes a bit with orienteering, but this has really lit her fire, and she's back in again and really keen to do. She's working on level 1 just now. John's comment on the left, he talked about it being great for his CV and having a much, it was a better job than working in shops and things. And John, again, he's a university student, but he says if he'd had this opportunity earlier on his student life, he would definitely have remained with the sport, but it's almost too late for him now. So it's just worth thinking about. There's a kind of critical point to engage young people, and it gets harder once they get further down the road. So that's our young leaders. One of the other things we've been working on is we talked about incentives in some of the discussions, and we've got something we call a STAR award, and that's really trying to find a way to bridge things between schools and clubs. So this is a system that basically everything on here follows really what's equivalent to getting to white standard, and we reckon with appropriate training and links between schools and doing a little bit of work beyond the school, playground, it's possible for most youngsters to get to that kind of white level and be club ready, if you like. So it's potentially a really important bridge and pathway to then allow youngsters to come into the sport and then keep going. One of our clubs, Forth Valley Orienteers, they've used the Star Award scheme quite successfully for a wee while, and they've also incorporated other challenges and incentives. So they've got this series of things. You know, you can be a tree balancer, a forest runner, a trail demon, and so on. And I think that captures the spirit of that Northern Ireland example, where there's this sense of adventure and challenge. And lots of kids, if you sell what we're about in those terms, that's a real winner. And certainly locally, we found doing stuff at night in local parks, the kids love it. It's just like they're in this sort of magical wee world. We also have a badge scheme that we're about to relaunch. These are just some more badges that have come through, so they're in there. But I suppose the bigger picture I'm trying to get over here is that we need pathways that are clear, and we need incentives along the way, ways to keep youngsters engaged, and these are some examples of that. The other thing we have is sort of beyond the club level, and that's where, again, the club's almost the bridge between what happens beyond school gates and university setups and clubs, and that's area squads. So we, in theory, have 3 in Scotland. In practice, 1 is functioning well, and this is what we call the Scottish West Area Squad. It's non-elite. It is looking at improving performance, but it's non-elite. It's orange plus standard, so it's not a high standard, and we've deliberately built in some sort of social time for all of that. We're just going to hear a little bit from one of the youngsters who has got involved with the SWAT squad, and I hope you can hear all of this properly. This is Rory.
So you're also part of the Scottish West Area team, or SWAT, and SWAT sessions.
It's been really fun, really enjoyable. It's taken us to a ton of new places, not just with me and my brother, but also with the whole family. A lot of the times we've gone camping beforehand and done another activity the day before. And then we go to the SWAT, and it's really enjoyable and fun, and you meet a whole lot of new people from all over Scotland.
Okay, so what would you say to other juniors about SWAT? Maybe you didn't know.
It's a great experience and a great thing to do. Sometimes places might be a bit far away, but if you put in the effort to get to the places where you can get to, it can make a whole lot of difference to your orienteering and just your performance overall, and be able to socialise with other people who are doing the same sort of things.
Okay, so what difference would you say it's made going along to SWAT?
It's allowed me to get more comfortable running at a higher level, and it's allowed me to progress a lot quicker than what I've been able to do before just with the club. With the club, I sort of got to a level, and that was sort of me for a bit. Hadn't changed really, I'd sort of just got comfortable at that one level. But as soon as I got in with SWAT, it started pushing me to do harder and harder things and get good at those harder and harder things.
Okay, and how have you found meeting other young people from other clubs? Has that made any difference?
It's been really good and interesting, and it allows me to know who I'm racing against in the competitions. I know names and I know the people who are there. If we go there and I see someone, I can just be like, oh, hi. And it's been really good because it's allowed me to see the other people who actually do orienteering in other parts of the country, because here it's either adults or young kids who do it. There's not many people of my age and my brother's age who actually do orienteering. There's a few people, but not at the same level.
Okay. That's Rory, who's from a small club I mentioned. So they're geographically quite isolated, but he's really, he and his brother have been the only ones in their club at their age, and there's a real danger lose them if they don't have contact with other youngsters. So Lucy's a bit older, and this is her quote. I asked her what she thought about it all, and she's really not interested in performance stuff in terms of squads and things. She's never had that on her radar. She's got lots of other things she's kind of interested in, but she's definitely found that coming along has just helped her improve her own confidence about what she can do. She started to make more friends, even within her club, although her club's quite a big one. There's not always, particularly with lockdown, there haven't been that many opportunities for socialising. So this is training we had recently up a hill, so this is everybody trying to get up the hill before we get started. But yeah, quite interesting, this term where she talks about it's a non-pressurizing way to improve. So I think that's particularly important when we look at young women, young girls, and you know, there are plenty of boys that would apply to as well, but I think that's just worth holding on to. So that's the SWAT squad, which is an area squad, and I think you've got like northwest squads and northeast squads and so on, which are might be equivalent. So I'm not really sure, but the key point is they are not elite performance focused. We also have them so that they're open to parents and adults, so they can come along and join in, but the focus is very clearly on the young people. They've got their own sweatshirts and their own kind of sense of belonging, which is, yeah, really lovely. Okay, so the final thing we're going to have a look at just now is the new initiative looking at encouraging juniors to get into planning, and Lynn, who's on the call, has been involved in that. We'll hear again from Rory. Sorry, he was the only one I could get at short notice, but he's done a brilliant job. So we'll hear from him, and then we'll take any questions on that.
The first question is really about the junior planning course that you did. So what got you interested in doing the planning course for juniors?
It just seemed like a really interesting thing to do, and I thought it'd be quite good since my dad had already done some planning, and it would help out a lot, and it allowed me to get comfortable with the software that was being used.
Okay, and how did you find doing it then?
I found it really interesting. It was enjoyable and interesting, and it helped me understand how courses were planned and what was going on inside the planner's mind as I was running the courses as well.
Okay, and what difference do you think it's made, if any, to your orienteering?
It's allowed me to think about why the planners put things in a certain position, or why this leg is slightly longer than the others, or oh, there's this here but there's not something here. So I understand why they've put it there.
Okay, that sounds great. And would you encourage other juniors to give it a go?
Yeah, definitely. It's a really interesting thing to do. It doesn't take up too much time, and it gives you a greater understanding of what is actually going on when you do an orienteering course.
Yeah.
So I wonder if Lynn wants to just add anything in about that that course. It's kind of fresh off the peg, if you like.
Okay, thanks very much, Fran. Yes, I think that a couple of things to do with the course. One, it was social for them. There were kids involved from Solway in the south of Scotland to Imbock in the north of Scotland, and they actually got to meet some people. Okay, it was virtually and online, but they'll see them at events once events start up again, so they have that bit coming in. It was fairly crucial to have trainers who understand about working with juniors in a virtual environment, and that actually became very strongly true because we originally had 2 workshops for them. And then at the end of the second workshop, they asked if they could have more. So we're running another 2 workshops for them starting at the end of this week and later on in January. So I think that shows the engagement of the young people was extremely positive. Some of them have actually asked if they can do an event safety workshop now because they want to get involved in volunteering. And so they're really starting on the whole of the volunteering pathway. We've kind of reeled them in at a reasonably young age. We kept it from MW12s up to MW16s. And the fact that they are so engaged, I think, has been very, very positive. Okay.
Okay, no, thanks, Lynn. That's great. So I think in summary, I've got a wee slide. I'm not going to bother putting it up, but it's basically there are a range of pathways, but the clubs are kind of critical to that. It's how do we move kids from school playgrounds or organisation areas to beyond the school playgrounds, and then kind of get them into the sport and engaged. That's the kind of critical role of clubs. So what I wanted to finish with was an opportunity for you to kind of have a think about the British orienteering strategy, and we've got some questions there, and have a think about, from your club's perspective and your engagement in the sport, what you think can be done to move things forward. Should we take any questions now, Rianne, before we go into that? You're on mute.
There's always one. Yeah, if there are any questions, we can have them in the chat now, or people can raise their hands. There haven't been any come through. There was one for Kay earlier. Oh, here they come. Suggestions for the older juniors, 17 plus, who aren't on the talent pathway to keep them engaged, especially as they leave for uni.
Yeah, I think that is a tricky one. I suppose that's why, I mean, it's interesting with the junior planning course, the target really has been at that slightly younger age group, because it's almost too hard. And it's the same with the area squad. I suppose the view is if we haven't managed to get them quite then, it's getting difficult to then bring them in. I think the next opportunity is at university, but if university setups are weak and not active, then we've lost a big opportunity there. And I think that's maybe something across the whole of the UK that needs to be looked at is how do we engage with universities, with college, with youngsters who have left the school system, because we have to remember not everybody goes to university or college either, but yet there are plenty of young people out there. So yeah, no easy runs on that one. Any more questions? Or the plan was to go into a breakout group. I can share just what we were going to talk about. We could just have it as a discussion